Welcome to After the Bell. I am your host, Lauren Cranmer, and today we have Gina Lehman, and she truly is an inspiring individual. This conversation was one of my favorites. She just found ways to empower herself through her cancer experience and life and came out on the other side better. She found a way to make life better, to feel better about herself, and truly just an inspiring individual. And I think this conversation really is important to listen to. And especially if you were just diagnosed or going through it, this conversation is exactly what this podcast is about and the reason that we share our stories. So please enjoy this episode with me and welcome Gina.
I am very excited to talk to you, Gina. How are you doing today?
I'm great, and I'm so excited to talk to you too.
So let's just hop right into your story. What happened? How are you diagnosed? And just take us through that a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So back in April 2021, I was 31 at the time. I was starting to feel a little fatigued, feeling a little run down. I had a toddler, so I kind of thought that was why. And then May 2021, it was the night before Mother's Day, and I'm trying on dresses, and I noticed my left breast was a little swollen, tender, and I started feeling around, and I felt a lump. At the time, I really wasn't freaked out because I was like, oh, it's probably a cyst. I'm thinking I'm young, cancer is not on my radar. But I did pull out my phone and I did a MyChart app. On the MyChart app, I did an appointment for that coming Monday. Went on with my weekend, went to Mother's Day brunch, didn't really think about it. Monday morning rolled around and I was like, oh, you know what? I'm fine. My daughter has a play date. I'm going to have to cancel it if I go to this appointment. I have an annual coming up in August. Like, I'll just wait till then. I'm acting like a hypochondriac. This isn't going to be a big deal. So I asked my husband, he's like, just go. You already booked it. Like, just go and make sure everything's okay. So I go see my gyno, and I'm thinking she's going to tell me, like, oh, yeah, that's like nothing. She's like feeling around, and she finds another lump that I had missed, kind of near like the chest wall at the top. And she's like, this could be nothing, but there is something there, and we know exactly what it is. So you're going to go for a mammogram and ultrasound. And that kind of freaked me out because at 31, I wasn't thinking about mammograms or ultrasound.
Right.
I believe it was about a week or 9 days later, I go for the ultrasound. And again, I'm thinking, like, I'm going to be fine. Like, they're going to do it, and they're going to be like, this is a cyst. Like, don't worry about it. But as the tech was taking photos, like, the room just changed. Like, she seemed very serious, she seemed a little sad, kept asking me my age, and she left the room a lot, and it kind of started to set in, like, this might be something bigger. Directly after the mammogram, they sent me to the ultrasound room, and same thing, the tech's, like, going over the same area, and long pauses, leaves the room for a while, and I'm starting to, like, really get the idea, like, they're going to tell me something. And then the doctor came in and she said, based on what I'm seeing in these images, I'm about 95% sure you have cancer. We need you to come back in for a biopsy just to confirm it. And I was just like blown away because it had gone from like, this is going to be nothing to like, wow, this could be something.
Yeah.
And then scheduled biopsy for the morning of my 32nd birthday. So that was as soon as they could get me in. And I kept telling myself, well, maybe I'll be in that 5% where it was just like, oh, the ultrasound and the mammogram were both wrong. Tried to be like super optimistic. And then, the morning of, I got the biopsies, told myself, whatever happens, happens. You're going to be okay. And then 2 days later, it was June 3rd. I woke up in the morning and like a voice in my head, I don't know if it was God, something told me today's the day they're going to call. They're going to tell you have cancer, but you're going to be okay. And I carried that throughout my day. We took my daughter on errands, took her to her therapies, did all these things, and got home, put her in the high chair, and the doctor called. And he said, this is the doctor from the other day, your biopsy. I'm so sorry, you have breast cancer. And because I had that idea in my head all day that everything's going to be okay, he was probably a little taken aback. So I was like, all right, so what's the next step? What do I do? And he gave me the number of the breast surgeon, and me not knowing anything about cancer, I was like, oh, okay. He didn't say oncologist. He said breast cancer surgeon. So maybe I'm one of those people who just has like a little bit of cancer and they just cut it out. Like I'm not really knowing anything about how breast cancer works. So I didn't even know anything about lumpectomies, mastectomies. So I'm just thinking, I'm not going to be fine. Like it's going to be a little bit, they're going to cut it out. It's not a big deal. I'm not even thinking surgery. I'm thinking I'm going to go in an office. They're going to cut the like lump out, whatever. Um, so then I set that appointment and telling my family was the hard part. I remember, my husband was out running errands. He came home and I told him, very emotional. And then I remember texting my sisters and being like, I have breast cancer. I'm not ready to talk about it, but you should just know. And I'm not ready to tell our dad yet because we're very close with him. And the idea of being a parent and having to tell my parent, I couldn't even do it.
Yeah.
So that was telling people was very difficult. I only told a few people before the actual appointment with the doctors because I wanted to know what I was dealing with. Then we went to the breast surgeon and she went through my pathology report. And that's when she told me stage 3, grade 3, triple positive, chemo, double mastectomy, radiation, immunotherapy, hormone therapy. And that's when I realized, oh, this isn't skip everything, cut it out, you're fine, you don't have to do anything. This is, you're going through breast cancer treatment, you actually have breast cancer. So that's when everything kind of became real for us. And we had to, really think about like, okay, we're going to do this. So then treatment started and that's kind of where we went.
Did you start with chemo first, or how was your course of treatment?
I started with chemo. I did 16 rounds. I started with 12 rounds of Taxol, and then I did AC.
Okay.
And with Taxol, it was easier on my body. And then also, it's a cumulative, so I know like it probably was just like building up where it felt harder by the time I got to AC.
Yeah.
My hair thinned out with Taxol, but by the time I got to AC, it fell out. So I remember I started chemo July 1st, and it was October 13th. I remember, or no, October 10th was my niece's birthday. My husband had shaved my head. And in hindsight, I know everyone does it differently. For me personally, I wish I would have shaved my head before it all started. I was so scared and I kept thinking if I hold on to my hair, it's like not,
Mhm.
it's just, I'm going to keep it or something like that. And the minute he like shaved it off, it was such a release. I didn't realize how emotionally draining watching it fall out, having it fall out was. So everyone does it
100%.
differently, but I feel like, I understand now why some women go in and do it first. I feel like that would have helped me better.
Yeah, I literally experienced the same thing you did. I wanted to wait a little bit to just hold on to that last bit of hope, and once I had to do it, do it. But that was very anxiety producing, just watching it and waiting. So the second it was off, just like you said, I felt that big like relief. Like, okay, I know it's off. Now we move on to the next step and like so on and so forth. So I totally agree with
Yeah.
that. Now, you said you were diagnosed with stage 3 triple positive.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's crazy. It's crazy. You can go from the diagnosis call, just, hey, you have cancer, to meeting your surgeon and getting the list of all the treatments that you have to do. Like, what was going through your head? Like, that's just so overwhelming. I wish there was a better way that this was given to us. I know there's no other way, but it's wild to me that there's this new world of breast cancer and you're just like, you have to do this and this, and we don't even understand half of it. Like, what were you thinking when she was saying all this? Especially because you weren't even ready. Like, you were thinking everything was going to be minimal.
Yeah, it's so true everything you just said. Like it is such a that day will always stick out in my mind. And my husband and I talk about what a life change like that day was more life changing than the initial call. Like I'll always
Mm-hmm.
remember where I was, what I was doing when they said you have breast cancer. Like you'll never forget that. I don't think any of us, no matter what, will forget the moment we actually heard it. But that day is so out of all the appointments I've been to, so like imprinted in my mind
Yeah.
because we went from the breast surgeon down the hall to the oncologist she sent us. And it was talking to both of them and going through it and, having them both say the same things about what this treatment was going to look like. I remember being in the breast surgeon's office, and when she said that, I was in shock and it hadn't really set in. So I was just kind of listening to her, but thinking like, oh my God, is this for real? And I looked over at my
Yeah.
husband to kind of be like, do you hear what she's saying? Like chemo? And he was crying. And that minute, it went from me just kind of being like, is this real? To being like, oh my gosh, this is real. But she was an amazing person to talk to because she was a survivor. She had lymphoma. Her son was 1 when she got diagnosed. My daughter was about to be 2. So, and she said, your hair's all going to fall out. And hearing that was like kind of brutal because this was like, whoa, I went from like thinking you're just going to cut something out. I'm going to go out, have let's go to lunch, like
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking it was that big of a
Yeah.
deal. And now you're telling me about hair loss. But she had this long, beautiful hair. And she's like, I was okay. You're going to be okay. This is a really tough treatment plan. You're going to get up every day and you're going to do it. And at the end, you're going to be better. And like, she was who I needed in that moment because I was like, oh my God, here's a woman who's a doctor, a mother, and a survivor for all these years with this long, beautiful hair telling me like I was sick in bed, my hair fell out, and I'm here now, like
Yeah.
treating you. I can do it. Like that was what I needed. And then when we went over to the oncologist, she had such similar things to say, and it felt really good. Like, and I was glad that they told me like this is aggressive, this is an aggressive plan, but you're going to be okay. And just as life changing as that moment was, they were the 2 women I needed to talk to that day because that really, really helped. And then, just kind of felt heavy and like, whoa, this is something we have to do, but we're going to do it. And then I remember that night I could not sleep, and I actually went on Instagram and I searched stage 3 breast cancer, and I was specifically looking for women my age with kids. So I
Yeah.
needed to know that they survived and they were okay. And I'll never forget the first account. I still follow her. Her name is Kelly. And I'll never forget, like, just scrolling and looking at her healthy with her kids and being like,
Yeah.
she did this. She did all the things I'm going to do and she's okay. And I remember telling myself, I'm going to be open about this because there are going to be people like me up at 3 a.m. who just had the most life-changing day who need to go through Instagram and just see for themselves that life goes on. You're going to have time with your kids. It's going to be okay. That was so comforting to me to hear and to see and to watch. And that's why I told myself, when you get better, you're going to share this. You're going to mentor others. You're going to look for those opportunities to be like, hey, I went through stage 3 breast cancer, chemo, radiation, everything, and I'm still here and I'm with my daughter. So it's when I see opportunities like getting on these podcasts or, any sort of survey, or I mentor through Fourth Angel. I always do that because I think of where I was in that moment, where that Instagram post just like changed my life. I'm like, yeah, look at her. She's okay now. Like, she's with her kids. Her hair grew back. She's working. Like, because in the moment it feels like, am I ever going to get that finish line when you're told how long it's going to be before you get there?
And look at you now. Look at your beautiful hair that you have.
Thank
And
you.
you're going to be that person for somebody. It's so like, I love hearing that because I think literally exactly how I felt. And I know like that's half the reason I'm doing this today is because we just need to be able to see what the possibilities are beyond that crazy experience we're in. So it's so amazing that you're doing this and sharing your story because it is going to help people, whether it is simply just relating to them or connecting with them or just anything. I remember the first person I followed too that made me feel like, wow, I could be healthy after cancer. Like I could do this. And it really was a game changer. It gave me so much hope and I'll never forget that. And it's, I think that's amazing that you want to continue to do so and do this. And it's awesome.
Thank you. But I feel like that about you. You're giving platforms to survivors like me and to people in treatment. And I'm so grateful for you for, taking the time to start podcasts and start Instagram accounts because they're so needed. Like being there, knowing I needed Instagram to connect with other people because I didn't know any in my life. So you should be so proud of yourself
Oh,
for
thank
using your
you.
platform to help others.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Oh, and that brings me to my next question. You said you wrote a children's book.
I did, yeah. So I wrote my children's book, Onions Mean I Love You. I actually have a copy here. I
So
wrote it for
cute.
my daughter. Well, actually, no. I wrote it before I had my daughter. And actually, the
Okay.
main character is a boy. I have a girl. And it sat in a notebook for 5, 6 years before I got diagnosed. And then when I had my daughter and I got diagnosed, I felt like that was the moment I knew it needed to get accomplished. I had started talking about publishing it in 2020 before I was diagnosed, and
Mhm.
my cousin started illustrating, and I started, working on it. And then when I got diagnosed, a lot of people were like, "Oh, are you still gonna finish that? Like, it seems like you have a lot going on." And everything in me was like, kind of thinking everything had to stop, and I wasn't gonna do anything. And then I realized, like, I'm sitting in the chemo chair, and I'm like, I need to do this because this is going to sit on my daughter's bookshelf and be like, I did this at a time where I thought the world was going to end and the world was going to stop for me, and I still did not let cancer scare me out of accomplishing my goal. And now it's going to be even more meaningful. It's not just going to be some book I wrote before I was even a mom. It's going to be a book I published while I was in chemo for my daughter. So the main character switched from a boy to a girl, and it became even more important to me because the whole book is about ways to show people you love them. And when I was in chemo, the amount of people that showed up for my family and I, from family, friends, church family, friends of friends who I'd never even met, we got meals, gift cards, blankets. It made the book even more special because I'm like, okay, this is what this is all about, is showing up for others, showing you love them, all the ways you can show you love them. So the book took on a whole different meaning and experience. And now when I look at it, I think of cancer in a different way though. It's like, this is what I did. Yeah, this is what I did to take my power back, to accomplish a goal, to not let cancer scare me out of thinking I couldn't do things. I did this while I was super sick. And the day it was ready to go live on Amazon, when it was done being edited and everything, was the day I got my cancer-free news. So it really felt like that full circle moment. I did it. It's going to be put out there. I'm done. Like, I had just had my mastectomy and my chemo was over. I still had radiation to go through, but it felt like I did something in a really low, dark place that is now bringing out bright love into my life. And it felt really cool. And uh, publishing a book was something I've had wanted to do since I was in fifth grade. And I won this Young Authors Award, and the ceremony is at a book store in our town that has like a little cafe. And I remember when I was in chemo, I would write a lot and I would journal a lot and I would write lists about things I was going to do when I was back. And I remember it was January, and I wrote down like my goals for the year. It was beat cancer, publish my book, sell it at Townhouse Books and Cafe. And by February, I had gotten my cancer-free news. I had published the book, and it was for sale at that cafe at the time.
Amazing.
So it was like,
I
felt like I
love
put
that.
it all out there. I wrote it down, I accomplished it, and cancer didn't take that from me. So it really has gone from just like a silly, cute children's book to this like very important milestone in my life.
That's amazing. And I love that you wrote down these goals because sure that those are amazing goals to have in and of itself, but while you're going through all of that, it's separating, it's making you more than just a cancer patient. And you gave that to yourself. So I think that's just so important to like, yes, obviously we're just surviving. And if you just have to take it what day by day, but giving yourself the opportunity to just set set other goals aside from getting through cancer is huge. And I think that's a great message to get across is that while this might be all consuming and this is a very hard time in your life, we could still strive for other things as well that can make us feel more human and not just patients.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
and are you selling it anywhere? Like where are you selling your book now?
It's still on Amazon.
Okay,
And
great.
it was really fun. Once I got done with all of my treatment, I was able to go on, some little author visits at libraries and children's
So cool.
museums and schools. So it kind of felt really nice. Like once I was done with everything, kind of getting back out there, it was nice to have that time to actually talk about the book and inspire
Yeah.
others to, it was more to me than the children's book was the message of like, not letting anything stop you from your goals. So it really felt like I did this at a time where everything was just upside down and it's here. So I really encourage anyone going through chemo and radiation, all that, to set some kind of goal along the way that can just feel like you took your power back.
Absolutely. And I'll put the link for that for Amazon in the description too. So if anybody's interested in getting it, they can.
Thank
Now I
you.
wanna learn more about your daughter because I know that was a huge part of your story and even the book and all of that. So tell me a little bit about your daughter.
Yeah, so my daughter, her name is Margot. She's 5 years old. Prior to having Margot, I worked in the field of special education, special recreation. I was a special ed assistant and I worked in special recreation for about 10, 12 years. I just loved everything about it. Very always very passionate about people with special needs since a young age. Like always wanted to work with people with special needs and because it just brings so much joy to my life. And, you know, well, God always has a plan, and my daughter ended up having autism. And I could tell probably between 12 to 18 months that she was going through a regression. She was typically developing as a baby, and she was a little slow to crawling and walking. And now I know that's because she had hypotonia, which is like generalized muscle weakness. But she was talking. And around 18 months, she stopped talking completely, which is a very big red flag of some sort of developmental disability. And I shouldn't say red flag, I should say sign. And I actually started around 18 months trying to get her into services and get her a diagnosis. And the week I was diagnosed from cancer was going to be her second birthday. And that was the same week she started therapies and was diagnosed with global developmental delay. So I remember like taking her to her first therapy appointments, going to my biopsy, going to find out I had cancer. It was all the same week. It was the first week of June, which is also both of our birthdays. So then I turned 32, she turned 2. It was pretty crazy. My husband and I look back on it, we're like, how did we do that? But as a cancer survivor, you do what you have to do, and you are incredibly shocked at how much you can actually handle.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, all right, I was going through chemo and I was still taking her to therapies because my husband had to work, and we made it work. And then when she was 3, I had her reevaluated, and that's when she was diagnosed with autism, and that was the same week as my reconstructive surgery. So we're like, okay, it's like everything, like all these anniversaries are kind of tied together, but they've been
Intertwined, yeah.
very big moments for our family to really realize how resilient we are. And my husband and I, we have such a strong marriage, and they say statistically, I don't know the statistic on breast cancer in marriage, but I know that it does for some people put a very heavy burden on your marriage. But I know they say for autism, I think it's 87%. I want to say it's 85 or 87% of marriages end in divorce. So my husband and I went from healthy, just fun-loving parents of toddler to, going through cancer and autism at the same week. And it was like a lot, but we are closer than ever. We're very strong. Just our family's our number one priority because it was like, to me, when I was sick, I kept thinking, what is their life going to look like if I don't get through this? So I think it really changed our family dynamic. Like we put family above everything else. And before I got sick, I always thought I had a lot of time. So I didn't really focus on how I was using that time. And now going through cancer and autism, I really focus on like how much time I spend with my daughter, what that time looks like, what we're doing. I'm very intentional with my time.
Yeah.
So now I look at all the gifts cancer gave me, and I really feel like cancer made me a strong mom, a strong wife. Our marriage is like unshakable because when you're faced with like these life and death things and these forever changing diagnosis for your child, where things are going to be very different than you anticipated. Our life is very different than our friends with neurotypical kids. We can't just travel. We can't just get any babysitter. So we have had a lot of things that happened in life that changed the way we thought it would be. But I feel like cancer kind of helped me with that because with cancer, I was very isolated for a while with chemo. So it kind of, everything that happened kind of prepared me for the next step. So once I got cancer out of the way, that's when I kind of was able to focus more on like the autism stuff, but cancer helped me get there, if that makes sense, because it really taught me like, getting these phone calls with these diagnoses and getting these life-changing things. I think it made me easier to talk to all these doctors about autism because I'd already talked to all these doctors about cancer and I kind of know how it goes to go to all these appointments. So everything kind of trained me. And I just couldn't wait to get done with cancer so I could just make it about my daughter.
Yes,
Because
yeah.
once my appointments are done, we can really focus on her.
Absolutely.
So in a way, everything happened the way it was supposed to be, and it made me stronger and more empowered.
That's amazing. I love the way you look at that because it's so true. Like if you can handle dealing with cancer for yourself, like how much more, like how much better you could show up for your daughter in these difficult situations and be her advocate as you have been your own, and how your stories are intertwined too. I feel like that's going to set your relationship up with your daughter for the future in such like a strong, like well-rooted situation because it's such a, that's two huge life altering things,
but all happening at the same time, and you had to learn to navigate that. That is, and I just love how positive you are about it all, because it's not easy. And even the fact that you talked about time, like acknowledging time and being intentional, that is so, I relate to that, because a time is such like a huge thought in my head about everything now. Like the time that we spend and the time that we have, like what are we doing, and is like what are we doing right now that's making this time worth it, and it, it's just, it's such a perspective shift that we could either look at as like this positive thing from cancer, which I see that you have, which is amazing. And it's not easy to do. So for those watching, like, you don't feel hard on yourself if you're not feeling like that day. But you could always, work toward that, and that's okay. But yeah, I think that's an amazing message as well.
Thank you so much.
Now, so how's your daughter doing now? Like, how is she?
She's doing great. She is 5 years old now. She has level 3 autism, which is the most severe level, but with therapy that could change. She was completely nonverbal. Now she has some words. She is a very big Taylor Swift fan. Yesterday she wanted her music on. She went from saying more for music to yesterday it was Taylor Swift. So I'm like, all right, like we're getting somewhere. Yeah, she's amazing. She inspires me every day. She is very resilient. She just every day I'm very intentional with how I use my time. And when I was sick, I actually wrote her letters. Like every time I was in the chemo chair, I would just write her a letter. And I think about that all the time. I think about just spending time with her, making use of that time, how lucky I am to have that time. I wear a bracelet on my wrist every day. Her nickname's Go-Go. And the woman who made it actually was a friend I made in the cancer community who had stage 4, and she is no longer with us. And today is actually her birthday. And I think about her every time I look at my wrist, because she had 2 little boys and a husband, and she loved her husband. And we related in that way that we, we're the same age. We loved our husbands and our kids, and we were going through these treatments. And I remember bringing her a meal, and she made these bracelets. And I asked her to make me one with Margot's name. And every time I look at her, I think of her every day when I put it on. And today being her birthday too, it feels very like meaningful that we're meeting today to talk about this. But she inspires me because she is one of the reasons I think so much about time and using my time with my daughter, because I think about how she fought so hard for extra time with her sons. And I experienced a lot of survivor's guilt with that. Survivor's guilt is something I very much so struggle with, because I feel so blessed that I made it to the end. I get this time with my daughter, and I'll never understand why some of us don't. But I'm sorry, I'm being so up. It does make me want to be so much more intentional with that time, because I feel very blessed to have it. So every day when I think about how I'm going to use my day, I think about those women, our pink sisters who didn't get that chance. And it makes me want to live more intentionally and grateful and live life to the fullest in honor of them. So I think of Nicole every day when I put my bracelet on, and think about, even the nights where my daughter's not giving me any sleep, I'm like, I get to put her to bed. I get to be up late with her. I get to have no sleep with her. Even in the hard moments, I'm like, I get to experience this challenging meltdown. Like, I get to do this. I fought really hard to do this, and I'm so blessed that I get to be here. And I need to appreciate every second, because not all of us are given that extra time. And I'll never understand why, but I think the best thing I can do with it is be intentional with it and be grateful for it.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that you experienced this so directly, because I think I'm glad you mentioned the survivor's guilt, because that's a huge factor. It's this great, like, obviously anybody that you lose to cancer, regardless of your situation, is awful. But like when you've experienced something that it's almost your stories, you feel connected, and then you see how different it could be, and it's like, why there's so many more questions, and it's crazy the weight that's on your shoulders because of that, and it's so difficult. And it is, why does this it's not fair. It's not fair at all, and it's not okay, and it needs to change. But I love that you're honoring her and all of those people by like, you're combating those feelings by showing up. And I think that's a really good, that's a good message as well to get out there to people, that if you're feeling this way, like what can you do to make it feel like you're doing something against it, like for it. And it's awful. And you're bringing me to tears when you're saying that, because it's just it's a deep rooted feeling, and it's not okay.
Yeah.
And I love the people that we, I'm sure you feel the same, like that you've met in this community, but it's a hard community to be a part of. And it doesn't get easier. And there's going to be blows like that. We're going to meet people we relate to, that we're going to become friends with, and that we might potentially have to experience a loss like that. And it's hard not to be internal about it, turn it towards yourself. And that's just a big thing that I think cancer survivors have to overcome and learn to rationalize in their head and accept in a way, so they could move on, because it can be really like life altering. I don't know. It's
100%. 100%. It was one of the biggest things to overcome with survivorship. Survivorship, I feel like, was almost more mentally exhausting and more mental hurdles than going through treatment.
Yeah.
And I actually talked to a therapist who told me that's totally normal, because my first thought was, what is wrong with me? I should just be celebrating. I should be just like, woohoo, I'm cancer free. And I immediately experienced cancer guilt and uncertainty, fear of like, oh, I felt more comfortable fighting it.
Yeah.
Now you're just sending me on my way. Like,
Yeah.
who's protecting me now?
Like, I'm on my own.
Yeah. And that was like totally unexpected to me. I thought it would just be celebration, happy times. And that's what inspired me to become a fourth angel mentor through Cleveland Clinic. They put me in contact with women to mentor. And I specifically wanted to for the survivorship piece, because I feel like everyone guides you through and everyone cheers you on. Then you get to the finish line, and that's when your mind goes to the dark places of, okay, I'm done now, but it kind of feels like it's right behind me, right? And like, who's going to help me through that? And another survivor told me it's like having a gun to your back. And I felt like that for the beginning. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to be still doing something to fight this. Like, and it felt like it wasn't really gone. Like, they're going to tell me it really wasn't gone. Like, all these mind things and worrying about everybody else. And I was really inspired to mentor specifically survivorship, because I think a lot of people are ashamed to admit that, like, hey, I'm cancer free now, and I'm like very scared, and I'm not celebrating, and I'm not shouting it from the rooftop. Like, I'm actually terrified now. I felt ashamed. I felt like I had to hide it. I felt like I need to show up just really, really happy to everybody around me, because I should be really happy. And
because that's the expectation.
Yes, and that was the hardest part.
Yeah. Yes, and I no one talks about, well, not a lot of people talk about that aftermath, which obviously this is why this is After the Bell, and why you want to talk about your story. And I think it's completely okay to talk about, like, I think that'll help people. By talking about it, it'll help people understand that what you're going through is something that most cancer patients will experience, and that you can move on from it and you can get out of there. But it is that expectation, because also too, as you're going through cancer treatment and you get to that, and there is less people there, because there's less support there. And that's the time when you really need it most. Like, yes, in the beginning, when you're getting shown so much love because everybody's finding out about the people that you've told your circumstance. And then, months and months go by, because cancer treatment's not like a flick of a switch. There's not going to be those people showing up. And then you're in this dark hole, and it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be so strong right now, and I feel the exact opposite. Like, it's such a hard moment. And too, like, you're questioning all of your bodies, like how you feel, like, is this cancer recurrence, or what's the future going to look like? And like, I don't know, like, there's so much, it's a new life. Like, it's like, you're like, I have no idea how to process all of this. Like, that's when you finally get to process everything, is because your body's like, okay, I'm done in treatment, and now what? So
100%. Like, I've seen studies that compare it to like being at war, like the amount of PTSD your body builds up. And I feel like I was in survivor mode for so long. It took a while for my body to relax and feel like it's not a threat at all the times. and to regulate those emotions. So I really like to support other women because we know how that feels. And I feel
Yeah.
like we think we have to hide it and be so strong all the time. And I didn't feel like I could totally move on to my survivorship until I addressed those emotions that I had hid from everybody. Um, and therapy was really important for me. I'm still in therapy once a week to deal with those emotions because I was such a person who felt like I have to be strong for everybody around me and I have to be positive and I have to, I felt like I had to hide any sort of uncertainty or emotion I felt that wasn't positive because it would scare my family. Um, so therapy was a way to like actually deal with those. And I'm telling you, once you address those emotions you hide, that's when like the real healing begins. And you're like, okay, I'm okay. Everything's going to be okay. But letting them build up is what caused a huge release for me. And I felt very scared. Um, so I encourage others just to like, I always say, feel all the emotions. Let the last thought be positive because that's always going to help you. But acknowledge and address those fears you have because they're very valid. It's a very real thing to go through. And, it's nice to want to be optimistic for everybody around you, but you also have to just take care of yourself and not gaslight yourself into, not dealing with your own emotions.
Yeah, you got to feel your feels, man. And it's like,
Yeah.
if you're just gonna it's only gonna make it harder. And like
Hmm.
you said, like once you feel them, you could end it on a positive note and then move on from there. And you could feel them all over again. Like this is normal. Like this is
Hmm.
something we never expected to happen to us. And you need to be able to work through it in order to get beyond it. Like you have to, go through it. And I love that you go to therapy. I have therapy too, and that was a huge game changer. Like so many. What other things do you feel like helped your healing along the way besides therapy?
Talking to women like you, talking to someone who gets it in autism and breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, something an autism mom friend said in one of our support groups today that I'm on Facebook, she called it a paper cut. When you think you're doing really well and then something triggers you, like it's paper cut. Like you're gonna get past it, it's gonna sting for a second. And I'm like, that is so smart because
Yeah.
there's moments where I think I've got this, I'm good, I'm all like I'm so strong, and then something will kind of trigger me. And I'm like, where did that come from? But I like the idea of thinking as a paper cut because paper cut stings really hard and then it's gone. Like
Yeah.
it stings
Yeah.
so bad in a second, and then you can kind of be like, I'm fine. It's a paper cut. So that's how I kind of look at those triggers that come up with cancer and autism for me now is like, I have to feel it. I have to acknowledge it. It's a very real fear. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. But then I move on right away and I go back to like telling myself I'm okay, I got this, I'm strong. Um, Working out has been very helpful for me. I was not active before cancer, and working out makes me feel like I'm doing something for myself, and that I'm helping. The odds are in my favor. The rates of recurrence are lower if you work out. Eating healthier, but I also had to do a lot of work in therapy about like not being so black and white. I've been
Yes.
somebody who's very extreme my whole life. Like if I'm doing this, I'm 100%. If I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it at all. So post cancer, I really put a lot of pressure on myself of like, this is your fault because you ate Chick-fil-A. This is your fault because you did this and you used to love Pepsi. And I had to get out of that blaming myself mindset. I had a therapist tell me it doesn't come with a gift bag. You don't know if it's because you did the keto diet or use this or use that.
Yeah.
So I really had to work deep to like be mindful, but not be extreme because that came with a lot of guilt for me personally. That became putting really high expectations on myself. And if I fell short, feeling like I messed up today and like now it's on my shoulders if it comes back. So I've, with therapy, I've really learned to let that go. I also look at cancer as like this thing that came in my life that really changed how I intentionally showed up in my own life, and I was a chronic people pleaser. And I'm telling you, if it wasn't for cancer, I probably still would be. It's been something I work on in therapy because I was like, you know what? This has shown me I have one life to live, and I was living it for everybody else, and I didn't even know who I was anymore because I was kind of like showing up how I thought everybody needed me to be, and I would kind of hide my own feelings to kind of like keep the peace with people. And I told myself, like when I was sitting in that chemo chair, I'd write myself notes and I was like, you are going to become authentic. You did not go through all of this to still not be sure who you are. Like this is going to give you confidence that's unshakable. And it's something I've really worked on in therapy is like, I did not go through all this to still be like a quiet, meek little, whatever you want. Like, I don't have any of my own opinions. I'm just kind of here floating through life. I was like, you're going to take your power back. So, as scary and as cancer is, like, it brings us this like whole new perspective and this whole new chance to live intentionally. And that's like my biggest takeaway. And that's what I kind of let guide me through survivorship. It's like, all right, you fought like hell, so don't waste it. Like,
Yeah.
you need to just show up as yourself now. So I'm really like finding who I am through all of this. And I look back and like, where was I going without it? Like, I probably still would have been a people pleaser, eating a lot of Chick-fil-A, not using my time intentionally.
If Chick-fil-A is okay every now and then. Okay.
Oh my God, I still love it.
I think everything you just said, like I relate to so much, and I'm like, I feel like you're saying exactly how I felt, like, which is so validating because like that like the feeling of just rebuilding, like I envision it as like we're a house, we went through this like tornado, we're ripped to shreds, and now we have this opportunity to build from the bottom up. And that's how I've looked at it ever since. And like, I just started at the bottom with very like simple, easy things to try to like build that foundation of like what I want going forward for myself, my family, like all of those things. And, which is a lot, like that's a big undertaking. Like we're 32, or you're 32 years old, at the time of your diagnosis. So there's 32 years of embedded, life, and such a life altering thing shatters that. Like it's hard to rebuild, but it's worth it. I think, you're a testament to that it's worth putting in the work because of how stronger you can be and how much more life there is to live, and live it the way you want to live it. And it doesn't have to be this crazy like life. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm traveling the world and I'm doing all these crazy things. Like living the life you want could be simply, I speak up for myself more, or I feel more confident in these decisions. Like simple things like that are like life changing. And I think that's important to know.
I love that you said that because my first day in chemo, my first journal entry, I had written this list. This is what I'm going to do when I'm done with cancer. And like, yeah, my book was on there, but it was like, I'm going to travel. I'm going to go to Disney World. I don't even enjoy traveling. And my daughter does not enjoy traveling, and it's very hard for her with her autism. So really, it's funny. Like in that moment, I thought I had to have this big grand thing I did when I was done.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm realizing there's more passion for me in just living each day the way I want to do it. Like you said, sticking up for yourself a little bit more, or having more of a voice, having more opinion. For me, it's just saying no to things that don't serve me.
Yes.
And like, I'm a homebody, but I feel like I'm living my best life at home, just being more authentically myself. So it's funny, in the moment I felt this pressure to do the travel and I was going to show up and be so different. And it's funny, I'm finding more power in just like living intentionally each day and just being my true self and rebuilding. Like you said, I like the idea of rebuilding because, yeah, I always think constantly like this really changed up things I needed it to change up. And I wonder would it be if I hadn't gone through something so traumatic. So like, I know the idea of like cancer in itself isn't a gift, but it brings you other gifts and it brings out other side of yourselves that you needed to address. And yeah, I think you said that really well.
I think too, just off of that, like it is a choice. So it doesn't, I think for me at least, there was like this thought that this change is just going to kind of happen naturally because of what we went through, but it still requires effort, and it still requires the thought process, like the intention of what can I do with what just happened, and what can I do going forward. Because that there is a lot of like expectation of what we should be, and whether we are intentionally thinking that it's an expectation and that we're kind of being like manipulated to feel this way, it is there, whether it's from TV or from things you see from afar or whatever it is. Like it's just whatever, you have to know what's right for you, and you have to reflect on it. You have to think that you have to put in the work, and you could do that for as long as you want. I think it's just important to state that you have to be intentional about what you want going forward, or things might not change and you might be affected by, what the trauma that you've experienced. You need to
work through it. I know we said that already, but I feel like it's so important
No, so
to
well
say.
said. Yeah.
Now, if you could go back in time and tell yourself, you know, one thing that you've learned afterwards that you would tell yourself when you were first diagnosed, or even somebody who was first diagnosed, what would you tell yourself with
That's a good one. I thought about that one a lot. I think I would tell myself that from the beginning, I told myself it would be okay, but I think I would tell myself that this is going to open your eyes to a whole new perspective. I think I would tell myself you're going to change for the better. Because even though I kept telling myself I was going to be okay, I kept thinking I was going to go back to who I was.
it?
And I remember a survivor had told me, you're going to be okay, but you will never be who you were before you heard you had cancer. And I was scared. I didn't know what she meant by that. And I immediately took it as something scary because it was in a whole world of uncertainty. Cancer was new to me. So I was like, that doesn't sound good. But now I realize I like the new me so much better
Yeah,
than the
I
old
love
me.
that.
Yeah, the old me wasn't intentional with her time. The old me was a people pleaser, a pushover, kind of just floating through life. And the
Yeah.
new me is so much more empowered from like little things I notice each day that I handle differently, and I handle them with so much strength and grace. And the other me would just look to what other people were doing and never felt good enough. It never felt strong. I feel really strong. There's some days where I'm just like, damn, you went through a lot and you are still here. Like
Yeah.
my confidence has skyrocketed. And so I like the new me. So I think I would tell myself or tell another newly diagnosed person, you aren't going to be that same person, but that's a really good thing because you're going to discover things about yourself that need to be addressed and you're going to rebuild yourself better and stronger and have this unshakable confidence that only going through something so life changing can bring about.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. It makes me feel like it gives you that purpose of like this was worth something. You know, like going through all of this
Exactly.
crap is worth something. And I do like to note too, because there was a period of time I've personally felt like I was mourning my past self, and that's okay. Like you're allowed to go through this period. Like life's not going to be the same again. Whether you do the same things, go to the same job, like you are not the same person whether you try your hardest or not. Like this is it
Hmm.
alters your thought process. It alters everything, but it's okay to miss it, and it's okay to work through that and kind of go through that period of mourning because it's just life has changed now, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Um, but I love that that's your message. I feel like you're going to be okay is a very common thought, like just almost comforting our past selves that, you know, you could do this, you're going to be okay. But I love that you said, like, if you're going to change, but it's going to be a good thing. And I think that is such an amazing note because I feel the exact same way. Like, there's this, I want everybody to know, like, your life can get better after cancer. Like, in a
Yeah.
crazy way that sounds crazy, but it's true. Like, you could do you can morph your life the way you wanted to. And I think sometimes cancer opens your eyes to that a little bit. So
Absolutely. I see the survivorship stories like you and I who can relate on that. And I see a lot of other women I follow who, now they're running when they didn't run before. Now they're,
yeah,
accomplishing something like publishing a book, like starting a podcast. And
yeah,
maybe that confidence wasn't there before and now it's
yeah,
there. So I think we can really all relate on that. It's really powerful.
yeah, absolutely. I love it so much. And this, honestly, this conversation like pumped me up. I want to go do like all the things. Like it
I
was
think
really,
we do all the things.
well, it's
You
so funny.
inspire me.
It's so funny too because I'm not like a talker. I've never been a talker. I think, and I relate to your people pleasing, in the past too. And I don't know if that was a part of it, but I was never one to like take charge of a conversation and things like that. And now I'm like talking on the internet often. So I think it's funny, like just to see that switch of it's all mindset. It's like truly
Yeah.
all of a mindset switch. And um, yeah, it's just it you really could make it whatever you want to be, regardless of like such the hardship that you've been through. It's a part of your life. It's not your life. And I think
Absolutely.
that's very important. But I could ramble on about that forever. But okay, so love the message. Is there anything else you want to say before we head out to people listening or somebody who's in a similar situation to you, whether it's cancer or with your daughter and your family life and things
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation,
like
and it's just such a testament to anybody listening to find your people within your what you're going through.
that?
I have an autism support group. I have a breast cancer support group. I love talking to other survivors. I love talking to people in treatment because I think we're all looking for somebody else to kind of guide us through those tough times, to show us like, hey, I made it through the other side.
Yeah.
And I think that is the most powerful thing you can do for yourself is not to go through it alone, is to find someone who actually knows what you're going through. I feel
Absolutely.
so seen when I talk to breast cancer survivors or I talk to somebody who's going through treatment now because I'm like, oh, I know. And, you know, you can talk to your family all the time, but if they haven't actually gone through chemo, they don't get it. And,
Mhm.
you know, same with being an autism mom. Like, I have a lot of friends who say such beautiful, wonderful things and I appreciate it so much and I feel so seen and heard by them. But when I talk to another autism mom, it's just that feeling of you really get like
Deep
everything
level.
I can't say on the outside. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
just feeling seen and heard. So I think to anyone going through this, find people to talk to, reach out, go to your cancer center if you don't have anybody in your real day-to-day life who can introduce you to someone. Fourth Angel Mentors through Cleveland Clinic, I'm signed up with them. Find these podcasts, these Instagram accounts. They're very powerful, and find those people to reach out to.
Love that. And where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
I have an Instagram account, Advocate Gina Lehman, where I have posted things about autism and breast cancer. And I just love connecting with other women. So, yeah, if anyone wants to shoot me a message, if they're looking to get signed up with Cleveland Clinic and find a mentor program or anything like that, I'd be happy to talk them through that.
Awesome. I will put all of that information down in the description of the show, just so they could reach out if they want to, or if you want to take part in that. It's the fourth, is it the fourth angel it's called?
Yes, Fourth Angel through Cleveland Clinic. And I think I've mentored at least 4 or 5 women since I got
Oh,
diagnosed, and it's just really nice. And it's at your own speed. If you're not a talker, we can text, we can email. Um, but it's really nice, and I've stayed in contact with all of them, and they're all doing well, which is amazing. Everyone's now on the other side of survivorship, and it just keeps growing. As we always say, you know, it's a club nobody wants to be a part of, but it has the absolute best members. And I feel like everyone I've met through breast cancer will be a friend for life, and that's really important.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Gina.
Thank you for having me.